So this video is going to go over how we're discussing the electron and why is it related to light? Why are we having this discussion about light? So in your book, you want to go to chapter 5. And for a couple sections, I will kind of point them out. Section 5.1 is going to be one of the sections that would be helpful to you. So if you go to section 5.1, it's called electromagnetic radiation. And we did give you a slide deck to kind of go through some of the finer points of electromagnetic radiation. But in your book, it does go through a very nice explanation of light and the electromagnetic spectrum. So that's going to be a resource for you going forward. So we are talking about light because the only way we know about the electron is to experiment with it. And so scientists figured out pretty early on that if we interact with the electron, we could then tell where the electron is located. So going back to, again, to make the connection from the previous unit, we have the Bohr model. And through experimentation, it was proven that Bohr was incorrect about what he thought, how he thought the electrons were actually orbiting the nucleus. So these experiments that we're going to focus on in this particular unit disproved his model. He was correct about these energy levels around the nucleus. So again, using the electron configuration as our tool, energy levels N1 through 7 we do have in our current model, but Bohr just thought that these energy levels were actually not equally spaced. He thought the energy levels were equally spaced. We now know that not to be true. So think of it as a ladder. We know ladder steps as we go up them are equally spaced so that we know where to put our foot. In terms of the energy levels in our current model, they are not equally spaced. And we have data to prove that by interacting with the electron. So we now have what we call the quantum mechanical model. Okay, we introduced that to you in the previous unit. And if we want to take a look at what we have in our resources, if we go to section 5.3 in your book, this is where they start to talk about the quantum mechanical model. So this will go over specifically your S, P, D, and F orbitals associated with energy levels. And again, in terms of which one is higher, which one is lower, S is the lowest, F is the highest. And then what are these shapes? So again, not too much emphasis on the shapes, but it is something you could visually then take a look at. Again, what these shapes are predicting is where the electron is about 90% of the time. So this is what we call the quantum mechanical model of how we believe the electrons to exist. So we now have data. Okay, so this is section 5.3 in your book. We now have data to suggest that this is how the electrons are in terms of where they are located around that nucleus. And in order for us to locate these electrons, we put energy in. And once we put energy in, the energy that comes out is in the form of light. And so we could then measure what kind of light we're getting out, the electromagnetic spectrum. And we could then see, okay, we put this much energy in. We know energy has to be conserved. So the energy that comes out is going to be, again, detailing out what exactly those energy levels are for the electrons. So that is how this all kind of ties together with what we did in the previous unit. But what this is going to focus on is specifically that electron and how do we interact with it. So light, Isaac Newton thought, was made up of particles. But now we know light is in the form of waves. And so when we're looking at a discussion of light, we kind of need to go over what is a wave and kind of go through some more information on that. And again, your book in chapter 5 does a pretty decent job of kind of introducing that to you in section 5.1. So just as you might know Isaac Newton, pretty smart guy, his theory had to be changed, or his thought process had to be changed when he got more and more data. So when we're talking about the electromagnetic spectrum, again, there are different areas of the electromagnetic spectrum. For our intents and purposes, there's not going to be any memorization of the order, and there might be some silly ways of remembering it. Instead, you need to know that it has different, what we call energy levels, and we're going to focus on that in terms of the calculations that we're going to be doing. So no need to memorize any of this. Instead, understand that there's different kinds of electromagnetic spectrum light, and that's going to be, again, a concept going forward. So in the next video, you're going to see, I'm going to focus on doing some calculations with light.